Today, we have a very special guest. I'm so excited that he is here with us today. I met this young man in Houston a couple of weeks ago at an event, and I was so impressed with his story. I said, I need to get you on. And so he was so gracious enough to take some time and come on with us today. And so I think you're really going to like this. He's a 19-year-old macro enthusiast. He follows great thinkers like Robert Kiyosaki, George Gammon, Jason Hartman, and Ken McElroy. So we're just going to dive right into it. So welcome, Josh, to Dirty Boots Capital.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your story, about how you got into macroeconomics and a love for finance.
Yeah, well, basically, I was in high school last year, and me and my friend ran a business junior year that got shut down during COVID. So I was like, well, let me figure out some other ways to make money that does not involve this. So I started just reading books and really just getting down into the Austrian economics and eventually into the freedom and liberty, wondering like, why am I locked into my house and why do I go to a store and I'm forced to wear something over my face? Because there was really just looking for answers with not too many out there. So I really just I found George Gammon, and then I really just fell in love with macro. So I ended up just following him everywhere he went, and eventually I got the opportunity to work for him. That's what I'm doing right now.
Excellent. So you were probably like 18 years old reading Austrian economics. Most
Yeah,
people don't even
yeah,
know what that is.
yeah. The like books like kind of like Atlas Shrugged or uh, The Creature from Jekyll Island, some like Rich Dad Poor Dad, just some economic and freedom books.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So you were in high school. Can you share with us the type of business you and your friend were running?
It
Is
was it was it was highly illegal. I'll tell you that.
All
As
right. All right. Maybe we'll edit that out.
no, you can keep it in.
All right. Maybe a bad question. Sorry about that. Um,
I don't mind.
so you're following macroeconomics, you're reading great books. Why do you think it's so important for young people to maybe spend a little bit of time learning about macroeconomics? Why is that so important?
Well, it depends. Do you want to learn how to make money? And if the answer is yes, then I think that it is very important to learn and understand this stuff just because it impacts everything. If you do want to start a business or invest, you need to understand the macroscape, which is just a top-down view on how the economy works and how everything moves the way it does.
Yeah, what about, do you think it impacts our freedoms?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just free market capitalism. Like, why is it that I had to run an illegal business? It was because we physically were not allowed to start anything at our age, and in the doing something legal. So
Oh.
the only option was to actually do something that was illegal.
You touched on something that I always have some interesting conversations with people on free market capitalism. Do you think we have a free market right now?
No, I would consider it more corporatism or just it's where kind of the big businesses and the government are working hand in hand to increase power and control between them, which is in making it harder for small and medium-sized businesses to grow and get started because of all the rules and regulations preventing them.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree. I don't want to. I never want to lead the witness in terms of the questions that I'm asking, but I totally agree with you. I don't think we're in a free market anymore. We haven't been for a very long time. Pretty much ever since we, went off the gold standard. Do you think it's different this time?
No, I trust me, I do just as much worrying as you, but I'm a very pessimistic optimist, as I like to think, because and just I don't think it's different this time, nor will it ever be. But if you've read The Fourth Turning by Neil Howe and oh, I forgot the other guy, but we're right where we're supposed to be in the cycle, where we are in the midst of a fourth turning. I think we'll have an extremely hard few years, maybe 5 to 10 years, that will just be absolutely horrible. But
Yeah.
right now we have weak men, and we
Yeah.
the only way to have strong men is we have to go through these hard times, which we will go through, but I think that we will hopefully get out and have hopefully a pretty good future looking out maybe 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, so you mentioned a good book there. So for anybody in the audience who's looking for a list of great books to read, Josh already, in whatever it's been, 5 minutes, has brought up some really great books. So The Creature from Jekyll Island, excellent book. It reads like a story, and it's actually a fun read. Atlas
Atlas
Shrugs,
Shrugged, yeah.
right? So that's a great book. The Fourth Turning by Neil Howe, right? That one was a little more difficult for me to read through. I'm not a huge I don't read a lot of books, but that one is a great book to read, or at least understand the concept of the fourth turning. And maybe in the future, you and I will jump on a future video and talk about some of these more in detail. And then there's another one by a friend of ours, Joseph Wang, that I'm going to throw in there, Central Banking 101, that
Yeah.
really explains a lot about the plumbing of the Federal Reserve and how things really work. So do you think I got that pretty right? Are those good
Oh
reads?
yeah, absolutely. They've all of them have changed my life in certain and if in different ways.
Yeah. Oh, and we can't forget Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert
Mhm.
Kiyosaki. You had mentioned that
Yeah.
one. So that's a good read as well. So, all right.
So what are your kind of thoughts on the future and how it will play out?
Yeah. So I think the next generation's even going to have it even worse because of, where when I went to college, my semester of college was like $2,000, right? So I worked over the summer, plus a little bit of money my parents gave me. I was able to pay for the semester of college pretty easily, right? And then some books, which wasn't too bad at the time, maybe $500 for books or something, not too bad. But today, we have young people going to college, they're dishing out 20 grand or 40 grand for a semester. And you look at that, and that's right there as a young person, that's really impactful because in a negative way, because now when they graduate from college, right, they're walking away with student loans. And instead of that money being when they actually have employment after college, instead of that money being made and gone to their retirement account, their 401k to build up for their retirement, or to purchase a new home and start building equity, that money is going towards student loans. So unfortunately, that generation is deferring their savings for retirement and deferring how quickly they get into the housing market, which we all know is the greatest way to build wealth is through real estate. That's been, a fact since the beginning of time. Um, so I think that's the biggest impact today for the next generation.
And then I would also add, they're paying more for college, but the opportunity is also lowering. Now, I mean, I don't know the exact statistics, but I kind of forget them. But it was around 1/3 of people who go to college afterwards end up moving back home with their parents, working minimum wage. So you're $30,000 in debt, and you're making $15 an hour with no opportunities in sight. When your generation, when you would go to college, you had opportunities after, like the plaque actually meant something because you could get a
Yeah.
job that someone else couldn't. But now I'd say it's vertical, like utterly like worthless unless you're like a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, or just one of those STEM uh, doctorate degrees.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Because I'll share real life story, right? Just so people don't think we're making this up, right? So to prove your point, over this past holiday season, I spent some time with my family, and I was chatting with my niece, who's I think she's 25 or 26 years old now. She recently, a couple of years ago, graduated from college with a degree, right? And at one point, graduating from college with a degree, that was, that was a big deal, right? And so she graduated with, I believe, a journalism degree, and she went to go work for a news organization as a journalist, right? So a very respectable, career, right? And so we're just chatting. over the holidays, and she tells me, she's like, I made more money as a waitress when I was going to school than I am now as a
Mhm.
journalist. And I was like, that's a problem, right? So what you're saying about, the opportunities after graduating from college, I think you're spot on. You're spot
Yeah,
on
and
there,
and
Josh.
and I would say this is a lot to do with the fact that we've been in a depression since 2008, which many people think that how great our economy has been, but it really hasn't. It's just the lost growth that we've had. There's a very distinct trend line of growth going back like a few hundred years, but since 2008, we've had a lower amount of growth. And a depression is kind of defined as just a less, like, let's say our economy is supposed to be growing at $5 trillion a year, but it only grows at $2.5 trillion. You're missing 50% of the optimal growth, which means you're really having a decline.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is all the macroeconomics of things, right? So when I chat with people about real estate, so my world is real estate, right? That's my business. And so when I chat with them, and you know, uh, you know, sometimes they just want to talk about the property or the cash flow or, the cap rate or whatever the, fancy word is. And I try to help them, and I try to educate them that it's so much more than that today, because investing in real estate today is not like it was 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. You need to understand so much more of what's going on in the world. And so, to your point of what's happening in the decline of this country, or the fact that we've been in a recession for the last since 2008. um, I'll bring up one thing is the debt to GDP, right? How that's exploded over the last few years, and definitely over the past 2 years with all the printing of the money, right? And how 40% of the GDP is government spending.
Yeah,
40%.
yeah,
That
and
is
and
huge.
and may I just add, what does that actually mean? So
Yeah.
100% of government spending to GDP was communist Russia.
Yeah.
It's complete government takeover of the means of production. And what did that lead to? Massive famine and just complete and utter just uh, totalitarianism. So the more government spending is a percentage of GDP, the higher probability that we will see these food shortages and just greater unrest and totalitarianism from these elites. And that's what we can see as the past 2 years have progressed. This decade a lot more like the 1940s, at least from an inflation point of view, because it was a very government spending heavy and low bank lending. So just like what we saw, money, well, we need to kind of go, how is money created to how that impacts inflation. Money can be created from either the banks making loans, which is therefore creating new dollars circulating in the economy, or like the stimulus checks we saw in 2020 when the government issues debt financed by the Fed going straight into the consumer's pocket. The same thing was happening in the 1940s, where we had massive government spending with bond yields low, leading to, there was times where inflation was up to 20% on the CPI, but then 2 years later it was at -3, because just massive swings from inflation to deflation.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So, jumping into quantitative tightening and Fed rate hikes, right? So we're starting to hear a lot about that these days. We started, I guess, towards the end of last year, more and more hearing about that, right? But here we are in 2022, and George Gammon just did a great interview yesterday. It came out, I believe, with Joseph Wang, who worked for the New York Fed at the trading desk, right?
Mhm.
Was that
Yeah,
correct?
he,
Yeah.
he he was the guy who actually did QE or QT. So the Fed comes out and says, we're gonna do $120 billion worth of quantitative easing this month. Joseph Wang's on his computer, typing the digits, swapping assets with the bank.
So if anybody knows this forwards and backwards, it's Joseph
Yeah,
Wang,
yeah, and that
right?
was his book that he was mentioning earlier, Central Banking 101.
Yeah, I have it right here on my for the viewer if they're interested. There you go. It's a great read. It's an easy read. Um, but in any case, so if anybody should know about quantitative easing and quantitative tightening and anything within the Fed. Joseph Wang would know that. And so one of the points in the conversation was about, well, will the Fed do both quantitative tightening and a rate hike at the same time? And George posed that question, and Joseph Wang's response was he feels that would be a very bad way to do things, to do both at the same time. Yet he thinks that that's the way they're going to go, is to do both quantitative tightening and rate hikes at the same time, right? So what do you think about that? Because they've never done that before.
I think it's very dependent on what the stock market does, because I think the Fed, as much as they don't like to say it, but their main priority is the asset prices, because our economy is so financialized. And what would our economy look like if asset prices were down by 50%? I don't think anyone would really like that too much. So let's say, like, even today, I mean, stocks have been tanking. Let's say they're still doing QE right now. Let's just say they bring QE down to zero and stocks are down another 10%. They maybe start QT, which is just them selling their bonds. What do stocks look like then? Are stocks down 30, 40, 50%? What is it going to take them to actually reverse course? I'm not sure, but I do think if stocks are tanking, they will reverse course and can start QE again.
Yeah, so the mandate of the Fed is two things, all right? It's control inflation and strive for full employment, right? So there's a lot of chatter out there about the stock market being in a bubble and inflated, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Looking at any metric, it's absolutely in a bubble. But I think the Fed their main priority is to keep it at least elevated or not going down in a disorderly fashion. You don't the Fed does not want to see a March 2020 style of 30% drop in a month. If we're down 30% in a 5-year time frame, I don't think they'll really care. It's just a disorderly drop.
So yeah, I agree with you. And that's the whole purpose of these dot plots that come out and all this water dropping, where they announce what they're going to do much in advance of them actually doing anything, because that guides the market, right? And so it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, how neither one of us believes we're in a free market anymore, right? Because a lot of it is hinged on, what did the Fed say? And now I'm going to do some course correction there, right? So with the stock market being in a bubble, you think it's going to be more of an orderly tightening policy or more of an orderly rate hike policy?
I don't think they can really control that. Dot plots are all fancy and stuff, but what's actually going on? And without this artificial new dollars being created by the government spending into the economy, I don't think the stock market really has a chance of holding up. QE is, I would say, almost purely a psychological phenomenon. There's no way when the Fed prints bank reserves and does an asset swap with a bank to take those bonds, that does not affect anything. You could say, well, it's actually lowering the yields on the long dated treasuries. Yes, in theory, that's how it works. But every single time they've done QE, the reverse has happened. Right when the Fed says they're going to do QE and they actually start doing QE, yields will go up. Whenever they've done QT, yields go down. So the private sector is the bigger portion of the bond market. So it doesn't really actually matter what they're doing there. But so the Fed doing QE doesn't actually affect the stock market. It's just the psychology of people that think that the Fed's printing money and then that's propping up asset prices.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the whole psychology of things, right? They don't actually have to do anything, right? It's kind of like I think I forget who associated it when they created these. It might have been a conversation you and I were having about when they started purchasing corporate bonds, right? They didn't actually purchase a whole bunch of corporate bonds, right? During the 2020s, during the during the pandemic, right? They didn't actually purchase a whole bunch of corporate bonds, but the fact that they opened up a window to do that, sent a signal, right, to the market to say, hey, the Fed is willing to, kind of backstop anything and everything, right? So that gave some confidence out there that ordinarily wouldn't be there, right? So,
Mhm. Yeah.
um,
So QE alone doesn't actually do anything. But what I do think that the market wants is more actual stimulus, which would be like the dollars being created by the government issuing debt monetized by the Fed, which is just new dollars being circulating in the economy, which is that me and you, the non-bank entities.
so, but we're not in that environment. I don't think we're going back to, I don't think we're going back to any stimulus checks, any stimmies coming out anytime soon. I don't think
Yeah,
so.
that's because if that does not happen, if no new stimulus comes out, then I'm a disinflationist. I would completely reverse course. Right now, I think inflation has peaked in the short term, but um I'm much more of a trader with this. A longer term view, I am an inflationist, but it's because I think that more dollars are going to be created. But that I think comes in the form of stimulus.
Okay.
And if for me there's so many cross currents going on, the main one is if the government is actually spending new dollars into the economy, and I think that they will. If there's a stock market crash, or are people are just so reliant and they feel entitled to deserving something, so that,
Mm,
I mean, new dollars could be in the form of price controls, or uh, the student loans being uh, just
forgiven.
like the government forgiving student loans, or new dollars actually like a UBI type of thing. But I do think the government will intervene, and that will keep inflation up over the longer term.
You touched on something very important there. Cancellation of student debt, right? Maybe we can talk a little bit about that, right? So there's been some chatter about that. That was part of Biden's plan to do that. Not sure if he's going to follow through with it or not. But let's talk about how that might impact, from a macro sense, how that might impact our lives, right? So if student debt is forgiven to a certain degree, those young people are now, instead of paying their student debt, they're going to have more disposable income each and every month, which they can do one or two things of. They can do many things with them, but I see, hopefully, maybe they would either start saving for retirement. Okay, so that's going to go towards the stock market, right? So that's going to maybe inflate stock prices, or that disposable income is going to go towards purchasing a house, and that will further inflate the housing market. What do you think of that scenario? Do you
No,
think
I
that's
think both of those are true, but I do think there will be a portion who just spend that extra $1,000 a month on consumer prices, and I think all that will be a just if that would basically have more dollars in the economy circulating, because it's just reducing expenses. And if the government reduces all your expenses,
yeah?
then you have more money to spend on stuff.
So so I love it when politicians come out and they say, we're doing this for the American people, and they talk about the American people, and it's like, okay, so do you see, if the politicians do this for the American people, for the college student with loans, do you see this as a good thing for the American people?
No,
Yeah.
everything. I don't think the politicians should do anything, and everyone just kind of thinks like, oh, our life will be so much better if this person gets in office, or this person, or if they just do this. How are they actually impacting your life? Uh, the way that I really like to think of it is, in schools right now, they're just pushing the narrative of socialism and these Marxist views that everybody is equal and we all deserve the same thing. So now people feel entitled on these socialist views that me and you should both be handed something. What I believe in is just the complete freedom for the individual to do what they want, and
Mm.
the opportunity. I mean, the equal opportunity. So me and you, we're both different, and we know that we're different. But we both should have the freedom to have the same opportunity to achieve whatever we want.
Yeah.
And these government interventions and regulations, they are doing the complete opposite of that. They are choosing winners and losers, and artificially creating just things that usually would just not go on in a free economy.
Yeah. So again, it's not a free market, right? We gotta try to help folks understand that this is not a free market when, stimmy checks are being handed out right and left, when student loans, student debt is being talked about being canceled. I mean, it's important for the adults in the room to look at that stuff and say, how does this impact me? Right. From a
Mhm.
macro sense, right? This is what you and I are talking about, trying to help people understand in a macro sense. It's not just,
Yeah.
Biden is looking to cancel student loans or a certain amount of student loans, whatever the amount is, right? It- you got to look at how does that now impact me in terms of where does that money now flow from those
Okay.
students,
Yeah.
right?
So let's go back to March of 2020. It was great. Everybody was getting handed stimulus checks, unemployment benefits. Everybody had more money and they felt rich. But what's actually happening now? You go to the grocery store and you see 20% of the aisles just barren with nothing in them. You see the cost of everything just skyrocketing
Yeah.
and you feel poor. Why is this? You
Yeah.
just got handed this free money. So aren't you much richer now? No,
Yeah.
because everything, not there is no such thing as free money. Like
Yeah.
if there was, these politicians are being so cruel. But why would they only give us $2,000? If this was free money, why don't they give everybody $200,000?
Yeah.
Then we'll all be super rich. And then even a third grader thinks on that and says, well, you can't give us $200,000. They might not know why, but they know that that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And it's because dollars are not wealth. Wealth
Yeah.
is the goods and services that are in the economy. And when you print money, you are reducing these goods and services. So the nation is becoming poorer as a whole.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you're giving the viewers a lot to think about today. Josh and I jumped on before this segment, and we were just talking, right? Just getting ready to record this. And Josh and I were talking about, he has a YouTube channel. I started this YouTube channel, and we were kind of joking about how doing what he does and what I just started doing, this is not a money making proposition for us, right? This is actually costing us money. And I don't say that I'm not crying about it, right? But the purpose is, right, we are trying to get the word out. We are trying to educate. We are trying to learn ourselves the best we can. And we're trying to push that out to the masses so that they can somehow learn, you know, how to do some critical thinking, how some of these things, these events in the world are impacting them in a, both from a personal and a financial freedom sense, right? So, yeah, I just want,
Tony, I would, maybe those are your goals. I am just a greedy capitalist who should just be torn.
oh, you're more than that, Josh. You're more than that. You're more
Probably
than
much,
that.
much worse.
No, 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 no. So, what do you say? I don't like ending on a sour note or on a kind of like a doom and gloom. What do you see going forward? Do you see any positive, any rays of sunshine in all of this? Please tell me
Well,
you do.
I see a lot more doom than gloom, but I do see a lot of positives. What I learned nothing in school personally. I learned not a single thing, and I was dumb. I mean, I've just partied. Just I didn't do anything, and I was told that I was dumb because your grades are a reflection of how you are. But if you can just start to want to learn and understand things, you can learn everything with just a touch of your fingers now. With your phone, you can learn absolutely everything and be more educated than someone who spends $1 million on school. It doesn't matter what you do because everything is just on the touch of your fingers. So if you are interested in learning, it is the absolute greatest time in history to do it. As
Absolutely.
for the
No.
economy, I don't want to end on a doom note because I don't have
All
too
right,
much.
maybe we'll leave the economy alone for now. But I absolutely agree with you. And actually, that's one of the things that I stress with people is, we are in a time and place right now with, with access to social media and access to YouTube and access to so much free information to be able to learn, and not only free information, but also being able to communicate, with great thinkers, right? Like Joseph Wang, right? To be able to send them a direct message on Twitter and say, hey, Joseph, I don't understand this. How does this work, right? He's a super great guy, right? So to be able to connect with people like that, is amazing. And one of the things I when we met in Houston that I took away with me, I think it was when we were chatting in Houston, was, if you want to learn how to run a business, are you more apt to learn that from sitting in a business class being taught by a professor who never ran a business, or are you more apt to learn it by socializing yourself with the likes of Robert Kiyosaki, George Gammon, Jason Hartman, and Ken McElroy, who have created multi-million-dollar businesses, if not more, right? Which
Mhm.
is,
Yeah, it's just a no-brainer. What is your goal? If your goal is to make money, then learn from someone who makes money. A teacher making 30, $40,000 a year. How are you going to learn how to make money from that person? Some people don't have those kinds of goals, but I do. As I am just a greedy capitalist, I want to start businesses and I want to employ people and follow my best interests. But if I'm going to learn how to do this, I'm going to learn from someone who's done it.
Yeah, no, that's amazing, Josh. You're spot on. So I don't want to keep this video too long. I appreciate your time. I want to have you back on because I want to do some deeper dives into some of the macro spaces there. And I think you bring a lot of energy to the conversation. And so I want to learn from you. I truly do, because I don't understand all of this, and I'm not afraid to admit that I don't understand it all. Right. I'm learning best I can. So I appreciate you coming on today, and I will be connecting to get you on in another couple of weeks here. So thank you for
Tony,
being with us.
yes, thank you very much.
Oh, and
I
one last thing. How can people find you? Do you have a
Oh
website
God,
or YouTube or
I do have a YouTube with my good friend Justin called Macro After Dark. We post a video or two a day, just same kind of macro themes, a lot of individual sectors or stocks that we're looking at, just really anything that we're thinking of.
awesome? Awesome. No, so folks, you now know where to find Josh, and we'll be chatting with him again here in a couple of weeks, doing some other deep dives. Thank you so much, Josh. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.